Hello, welcome to Digless, a podcast by Les Quarry. Today I'll be speaking to Steve Langlois, Managing Director of Guernsey Water, about the utility's massive investment programme and recent price hikes that it's announced for its customers. Steve, thank you for joining us in the Quarry studio today. It's great to have you in.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Yeah, it's obviously come in on the back of a big investment announcement, but also a sting in the tail for the customers, as always with this kind of case. But I just want to maybe roll it back a little bit to explain Guernsey Water and its function and its setup as well.
Yeah, that's a really good place to start, actually, because there's a lot that goes on behind the tap and the sink that perhaps isn't that well understood. And it's as Guernsey Water, I think it's really important for us to explain that, and we can't stop explaining it. We need to keep on doing that, and we've been trying to do that with the announcements that we've just made around the investment that's needed over the next 12 years. Guernsey Water is. We see ourselves as stewards, really, of the island's water from source to sea, and by that we mean, we collect it from streams, and then we transfer it to the island's reservoirs, which there are 14 in total around the island. Some of them are very small, and then from the reservoirs we transfer the water to one of 3 water treatment works, and that's where the magic happens, I guess. That's the really important transformation from stored rainwater into drinking water, because in order for it to be, fit for supply, there are very strict standards that need to be met, as you'd expect. And so there's some quite intensive processes that the water goes through in order to treat it, clean it, and enable us to supply it. Then from the water treatment works, there's around 460 kilometres of water distribution mains. So that's a lot. I can't remember how many times that stretches between here and Jersey, but it's a lot. And so, pretty much any road that you walk or ride or drive on in the island will have a water main underneath it, and a sewer, but we'll come on to that. So, we distribute the water through hundreds of kilometres of water mains. And there's a little bit more to the distribution system than that. There are some treated water storage tanks, so drinking water storage tanks within the network, and their purpose really is to make sure that the network itself never sort of runs out of water. So overnight that tank fills up to the top, and then during the day when people are using water, the levels in those tanks drop. So it keeps the network charged with water, if you like. And then, of course, it arrives at customers' homes, and we test our water all the way from source to tap. So we're testing it in the streams. We're testing it as it comes into our water treatment works, as it leaves. We're testing it in the distribution system, and we test it at customers' homes as well, coming out of their taps. This is really, really important that we make sure it's meeting quality standards. Once customers have used it again, it then becomes our responsibility again, and we collect used water or wastewater using, there are around about 350 kilometres of drainage systems on the island. That includes foul water drainage as well as rainwater drainage, and combined as well. So the systems we design have to be able to cope with rainwater. And that's quite tricky because a lot, the rainfall events can lead to a lot of water entering the system in a very short space of time. If customers aren't connected to the sewerage network, and 5,500 are not connected, so about 15% of our customers. We're responsible for the cesspit emptying service. So there's a fleet of around 40 tankers that collect wastewater from customers' homes. And for about 96 pence a day on average, we transfer that water from customers' homes to the drainage system. So there are emptying points all around the island that the tankers go to, and they empty cesspit wastewater from cesspits into those emptying points. There's 58 wastewater pumping stations dotted around the island, and they move the wastewater around, essentially get it over the hills, because gravity will only take it so far, and then we rely on pumping stations to move it around the island. And ultimately it all finds its way to Belgrave Wastewater Centre. It's a little while ago now that, in fact, shortly after I joined Guernsey Water, that the upgrades of that wastewater centre were completed. There it's screened. There's stormwater treatment as well, and then it's returned to the environment in the Little Russell via long sea outfalls. So it's actually a really complex system, and it requires a lot of upkeep on a day-to-day basis and a lot of ongoing investment in renewal. It's taken 100 years or so for those systems to evolve. And, over that period of time, the network has grown, it's got bigger. It's also got more complicated as we've invested in different ways of being more efficient. And as it's got bigger and as it's got more complicated, the cost of renewing it, because at any one point in time, there are parts of those systems that come to the end of their life and require replacement. The cost of renewing it over that period of time has gone up as well. There are pumps, pipes, valves, electrical panels, control systems. We can go down into even more detail, and these are the things that are operated day to day and occasionally fail and need to be replaced. Or if it's a really critical piece of equipment, then we have to plan to get in there and replace it before it fails. So there's a lot that goes on behind the tap and behind the sink.
And in terms of that capital program, big investment program announced, are we playing catch up at the moment? Is there a bit of a legacy of underinvestment that we need to readdress? Or
I think it's important to emphasise, Guernsey Water has always continued to invest in the renewal of that system. And if you look back, we've invested 4 to 5 million a year. The cost of that amount of work has gone up, particularly recently. Construction inflation has made a big difference. So the same amount of work costs quite a lot more to do now. And then also, as I was explaining, over time, as the network has grown and it's got more complicated, there is more to do to renew it. So that's also increasing the cost of renewing those systems as well. And so as you know, we've announced that there's 130 million of investment over the next 12 years. That's what we're planning for. And the vast majority of that is in replacing existing infrastructure, things that are already out there. And we've done a lot of work to understand what we expect to come to the end of its life and need replacing when. And so we've got a pretty good picture over those 12 years of what's going to be needed. And the vast majority of that 130 million, so around about 72 million of that, is investing in renewal of existing infrastructure. So, it's maybe not the exciting element of it, because we're doing that to stand still. We're doing that to ensure that we can continue to provide the good quality service that we provide today. And I think perhaps that's what maybe over time has become undervalued a little bit. The value of water is quite an interesting thing to think about, because I think over time we've come to value water as something that just comes out the tap whenever we turn it, and we expect that. And why wouldn't we? Customers have earned the right to expect that, because they've paid for all of that infrastructure that has evolved over the years. But if we don't continue to invest in it, then it won't necessarily come out the tap every time we turn it. And perhaps, I've been thinking about this, and obviously I know what goes on behind the scenes, and I think about it as something that maybe might not come out the tap if all that work doesn't get done, and maybe there's a different way of valuing it, a different way of thinking about it. Is understanding exactly what goes on and what's needed to ensure that keeps happening.
You've got some challenges coming up, though, as well. Big. Think about the big picture challenges. Changing climate has been cited as one of the factors that's at play with what you're doing. What are you expecting there, and what are you expecting to have to cope with?
Yeah, well, the climate's changed already, and we're expecting further changes. I mean, if you look at, I think 10 of the warmest years on record have occurred since the year 2000 in the UK. So it's already happening, and it's gonna continue to happen. So we're expecting hotter, drier summers, and with that comes the risk of more severe droughts than we've ever had in the past. And so whereas up to now we've been planning for a repeat of the worst drought that's ever occurred in Guernsey, so we're resilient to that, we need to start thinking about a drought that could be worse than that. Because of climate change, we should expect that to happen now at some point in the future. Obviously, we don't know when; it's impossible to predict. But we would much rather be ready for when that does happen and be resilient to it than be scrambling to try and fix the problem after the event or during the event. So yeah, that's a really important part of our plans. The States of Guernsey debated the future use of Les Vardes Quarry earlier this year, and they've obviously they've directed that it should be used for water storage. So that is now a really important part of our plans. We're not expecting Les Vardes Reservoir to come online until towards the end of our 12-year plan, but these are big infrastructure investments, and they have long lead times. So whilst Les Vardes Quarry is an operational site, Ronés own it and operate it, and they will continue to do so until 2035 is their latest estimate. But there's a lot of pipe work needed to actually connect the reservoir up to our existing network of reservoirs. It's really important that we can move it around and we can get it to our water treatment works. So around about half of the investment we've allowed for is for all of the pipe work and the infrastructure that's needed to connect that reservoir up once we can get in there and convert the quarry. So and that takes time. So by way of comparison, the amount of water pipelines that are needed to connect Les Vardes Quarry up is very similar to the length of the strategic water main that we've started installing just over a year ago. So this is an £11 million water main project that will supply water to much needed new homes that are planned. Parts of our system are already at capacity, so it's needed. We need to get ahead of the new development and population growth that's coming, and that's a 7-year project. And it's 7 years because we'll deliver it in multiple phases. We've already delivered the main. We've gone up Rectory Hill, and then along towards Beaucamp School, Thompson Motors down that road. So the first couple of phases have been delivered, but there's another 6 years to go in that project. So it's a long lead time to install that pipeline, and Les Vardes is the same. So we can expect that to take a similar amount of time, and that means really we ought to be planning and looking at design and thinking about that now, and we are doing so. So, that all starts from next year.
So another part of the capital investments looking at broadly, I'll call them pollutants, things like PFAS. And I know there was a post up on Guernsey Water.
Yeah.
Today or yesterday, wasn't it? Can you just take us through the sort of challenges that you're facing there? What water you're not collecting and why?
Yeah, so another really important aspect of the investment plan is in improving drinking water treatment. And we're planning to do that at all three of our water treatment works. And there's a dual purpose really to that. One is to meet tighter drinking water quality standards, which we know are coming in the future. And the other one is to contribute to drought resilience. Let me just, if I explain that, because it maybe doesn't quite, it's perhaps not immediately obvious. So as drinking water quality standards have tightened for things like pesticides and PFAS, as you mentioned, and maybe I'll come back to just explain a little bit about what PFAS is, but we need to remove, we're looking at absolute, tiny amounts of these things in drinking water, effectively removing them completely. And we've been able to get down to those incredibly low levels so far by blending different water sources. So through dilution, basically, of streams that have really, really small amounts in, we can dilute with streams that have none. Or we don't collect from streams at all. Now, in recent years, as drinking water standards have tightened, that's meant that more and more of the island's streams have become unavailable to us. So there's around about 20% of the island's catchment area now that is either unavailable or only available intermittently, depending on the quality of those streams. Remember earlier I explained, we're sampling them all the time so that we understand what the quality is, and so we can make decisions around what to collect and what not to collect. But because we're not able to collect that water, that does affect our water resources position. It's had quite a significant impact on the amount of water that we can collect and store in our reservoirs. Now, by installing water treatment, that will enable us to collect from those streams because we'll be able to remove the contaminants within them with better water treatment processes. And that then, of course, improves our water resources position. So the dual purpose, that investment will enable us to meet tighter drinking water standards in the future, and it will also enable us to collect more water. So that'll improve the island's drought resilience whilst we're waiting for Les Vardes Reservoir to come online.
When you look at paying for this capital investment, it's a bit of a split picture, isn't it? There's an element of borrowing, an element of more immediate charges. How do you come to that decision about how that split is made? And could you just give us a little bit more background to your borrowing at the moment and where we stand financially?
Yeah, so Guernsey Water has borrowed for infrastructure improvements already, and the Longsea outfall replacements at Belgrave are a good example. The way we the way we sort of determine how much to pay for through today's bills and how much customers should pay for over a longer period of time, i.e. borrow to fund the investment, is that obviously all of our day-to-day costs, all our operational costs, today's bills, that's today's service, so today's bills need to fund that. There's also the renewal of the infrastructure that we already have out there, and that is very much about maintaining the quality of today's service. So it's the cost of those two things, and any interest on existing debt, of course, that we have. That's what today's bills need to cover. Where we're investing in, we call it enhancement or an improvement. So a new water treatment process, for example, that improves the quality of the drinking water that we provide, we would look to borrowing to fund that investment, and that then the spread of the cost of that is partly on today's customers, but also on customers of the future as well, because they will benefit from that improvement in drinking water quality.
Looking at the latest price rise, so I have the figure in front of me, I can't see it at the moment. This isn't in isolation, is it? There's been a price rise recently as well. Why make that decision now?
Well, we're making that decision in the context of that 12-year plan. So you're right, there has been quite a significant increase in bills, and we're looking at around about a 9% increase on average next year. But that is with that longer term infrastructure investment in mind. So we're thinking about all of the needs there when we make those decisions on bills. And what we're trying to avoid is even sharper increases in the future. So that's the main reason behind the thinking. And of course, the need for investment has increased. Because in addition to all of that infrastructure renewal, we've got population growth and climate change to think about, and new quality standards to meet as well.
And what does it mean for the future? What reassurance can you give to your customers that, can you give a reassurance this is the end of it, or are we looking at above inflation price rises for years and years and years to come?
I can't say that there aren't going to be those increases. But in taking that longer term investment plan into consideration, when we set the bills for next year, we're expecting smoother increases beyond that. We are looking at inflationary or just above inflationary increases for a number of years, potentially. I mean, all of that, could change. I mean, I think if there's one thing you can guarantee with a 12-year plan is that you're going to deliver something different by the end of that 12 years, or the costs will change, and they may be less, they may be more. We can't be too conservative in our plans, because that would put unnecessary pressure on bills for next year. But there's a lot of unknowns, obviously, in a 12-year plan. That plan is not fixed. We'll review it on an annual basis. So each year, what we do is we come back to the 12-year plan and we review it, and then we'll set bills for the following year in the context of that. There are no guarantees, but we are thinking ahead. And one of the main reasons for thinking ahead is to try to avoid cost shocks, if you like, for customers, so that there's a smoother change in bills over time.
And you have been looking at savings within Guernsey Water as well, haven't you?
Yeah, we're always looking at ways to reduce cost if we can, and ways to be more efficient. We've challenged our budget for next year. I mean, I think it's only right, to be open and say, the budget as a whole is increasing, but we have taken cost out of it. For example, the way that we run our water treatment works, having invested recently in the refurbishment of St Saviour's water treatment works, and now we've got more reliable output from that water treatment works. We're confident that we can. So we don't have to run 3 water treatment works all throughout the year. During the summer, customers they need more water, so demand goes up, and we need all 3 water treatment works. They're essential. But during the winter, when demand is reduced, then we can switch one of them off. And now St Saviour's is refurbished, we think we can probably run for a longer period of time on just the 2 water treatment works and reduce costs. So, there's one example of some savings, and we've taken money out of our budget ahead of next year accordingly. We haven't just set a target; we've actually reduced the amount of money that will be available to us as a result of that. And there are other examples as well. We've been insourcing some of our wastewater services, we expect to save around about 150,000 a year as a result of that. Again, budgets have been reduced accordingly, so the challenge is set.
And are there any other areas you could look at in the future, or you're thinking of looking at in the future in terms of efficiencies? Just as an example, in the past we looked at how the sewage cart collection system works and whether that was running as efficiently as it could do. IT is always developing, as we know, and I think that was touched on in some of your reports as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've made some real advancements in that area in the past. I mean, we're now at a stage where we're replacing our we call it a SCADA system. It's like a supervisory control system. So essentially, we can run all of our sites. So all of those sites that I explained earlier, they can be operated from one place at our headquarters. So we have a 24/7 shift pattern, and a small control room technician team that essentially they can turn pumps on and off, open and close valves, monitor water quality. They can do all of that from headquarters at Brickfield House, which means we don't have to have people based at our sites. And that centralisation was made a long time ago, over a decade ago. So that was a real efficiency, and we're now replacing that system to retain that efficiency. So a good example of where we've used technology to be more efficient. The cesspit emptying service is an area that we are really focusing on, because it costs about $4.5 million a year to operate that service, and we recently replaced the scheduling system that we use for coordinating all of the collections. And there's about 165,000 collections every year. So it's a lot. And we are finding that we can do that more efficiently. With the information that system's now giving us, we've been able to make some scheduling improvements, and the completion rate of collections on the scheduled day of collection has really increased as a result. So that's positive, but there's undoubtedly more we can do. One of the things that we would really like to be able to do is to actually monitor the level within cesspits, so that we can enable our customers to maximise the capacity within their cesspit. That would be a real step forward if we could do that. It's not easy, because it's quite a difficult environment with a lot of corrosive gases. So whatever monitor you put in there has to be really robust and resistant to those corrosive gases. And then you've got communications challenges. Often we're below ground, so it's difficult to communicate with a system to then explain, whether half full or in need of collection. But we are trialling a number of different units. We had a recent trial a year or two ago. Unfortunately, the communications weren't effective, so that didn't work. But that hasn't put us off. We're still trying, and there are two more different types of sensor, two more different types of technology that we're actually installing at the moment to run another trial. So yeah, we are always looking at opportunities, and there's a big opportunity there if we can crack that.
You work with your customers as well to help them save their bills and cut their bills, and what does that entail?
Yeah, well, there's a number of different ways. So, looking at the price changes that we've made for next year, we have deliberately put more of the increase onto the usage rate, and less of the increase has gone onto standing charges. And the thinking behind that is because customers don't really have any control over the standing charge. It's a really important charge. It pays for it, so even if a customer's home is empty, they need to have the ability to use water when they get back from their holiday, for example. And so all of the infrastructure is needed. It has to be in place to enable water to be provided as and when it's needed, whether it's used or not. And that's what the standing charge covers. Well, it doesn't cover it. It makes a contribution towards those costs. But of course, customers can't affect that. They can't use less to reduce their bill. So that's why more of the increase has gone onto the usage charge. So if you are on a water meter, you have a bit more control over the impact of the price changes on you. If you use less water, you can reduce your bill. And if you don't have a meter, you can switch to a meter for free of charge. We'll do that for you. And generally, customers that switch have saved between sort of 12 and 15% on their bill. It depends on how much water you use, obviously, and the size of your property, because that's how you'll be charged currently on that basis if you don't have a water meter. So that's one way where we're trying to help customers, and there's advice on our website around how you can use water more efficiently as well. And we've been giving advice on that throughout this summer, because it's been quite a dry summer, and we've been asking customers to use less water to help preserve precious water resources, and they've responded really well. So yeah, and then if customers are struggling to pay, if they're finding it difficult, and some may be concerned about the price increases, then we encourage them to phone our customer services team and have a chat with them. There are payment plans potentially. There are different things that we can do depending on your specific circumstances. So contact us sooner rather than later would be what we would say in those circumstances.
Looking a bit to the future as well, is the whole debate about a full sewage treatment plant. It bubbled up maybe in the 2000s. Is that debate done now? Like, are we happy with where we've got to?
Well, I mean, never say never. I mean, it may come back round again. There's no environmental evidence at the moment to suggest that needs to be revisited. In fact, the States of Guernsey just released this week, you would maybe seen in the news, the bathing water quality results for the last year, and they're really good. And they've actually improved in a number of areas. And on the East Coast, the results are really good. So there's nothing there that kind of suggests that we need to revisit it. As part of the license that we have from environmental health and pollution regulation, we do have to carry out monitoring of the dispersion zone in the Little Russell, and they're content with all of the results that we get from that, and we're meeting the requirements of our permit. So there's nothing there that is suggesting we need to revisit that debate. I do understand that it's controversial, and a lot of people won't ever agree with it. They will perhaps feel that on principle we should have full wastewater treatment on the island. The solution that we have is founded in sound science. All the work was done some time ago, but a full marine impact assessment was done. There was a lot of seawater quality monitoring done, a coastal water quality model developed. The impact of the discharge was looked at using established techniques, investment in wastewater treatment up and down the country, hundreds of millions, was based on the same techniques. And what that found is that because of our unique circumstances, because we're a small population, if you compare to wastewater discharges from Birmingham or, big cities where, you've got 1 million or more population equivalent, Guernsey's quite small in comparison. And we don't have the heavy industry. So in terms of the priority hazardous substances maybe that you might find in wastewater discharges elsewhere, we don't have the heavy industry in Guernsey. So I suppose if you think about the strength of the wastewater that we're discharging, it's not as strong as, where you would, if you were to compare with other areas. And then the standards that you need to meet on your discharge all depend on the amount of dilution that you're able to achieve in the receiving environment. So it's all about receiving environmental capacity. So if you have heavy industry and a large population discharging wastewater to a small river, then the standards are going to be incredibly tight because there's not a lot of environmental capacity in that small river to receive, large volume, quite high strength wastewater. What we have here is a smaller population, no heavy industry input, and one of the largest tidal ranges in the world in the Little Russell. So it really is an area of very high natural dispersion. So all of those things combined, when the scientific study was done, it was determined that we needed preliminary treatment and stormwater treatment, and then the sea outfalls that were installed had to get to some optimum dispersion zones. If we reach those zones, then there's sufficient capacity in the environment to deal with the discharge through natural processes. That was the strategy that was resolved by the States of Guernsey back in 2012. And as I say, since then, there's been no environmental evidence to suggest that it needs to change. But it may be revisited at some point in the future. If the island did want full wastewater treatment, it would be a major challenge to deliver. All of the island's drainage system is set up to gather all of our wastewater, rainwater, and take it to Belgrave. So it would need to be something within that vicinity. The current site that we're on is incredibly constrained. I mean, we've got neighbours right on the doorstep, And so a big part of the investment is in reducing and preventing any nuisance to those. If you were to put a full wastewater treatment plant in there, well, I don't think you've got sufficient space. So it would have to go somewhere else. So you'd need to turn that into a big pumping station, transfer it to, I don't know, maybe Longhoog reclamation site. A lot of that site has now been taken up. So finding somewhere for it, that's the first challenge. Then, of course, you've got to find the funding. And I think back in 2012, the estimated costs were 75, 80 million and 2 million a year of operating costs. So if you were to inflate that to today's prices, it's going to be, you're talking hundreds of millions probably, and significant operating costs. So water bill, we couldn't ask water bill payers to fund that. So, government would need to find the funding for that. So it would have to be prioritised against schools, hospital investment, and so forth. So, and then once you've got the wastewater treatment in place, you've got the byproducts that come from it, and that's something that would need really careful consideration. So the biosolids that are produced by that process, we wouldn't be able to put them on the land. We don't have sufficient land bank here in Guernsey to be able to do that. So it would all need to be exported off island because we don't have any destructive processes here. There may be opportunities through anaerobic digestion perhaps, and then, you can actually generate energy from that by using the methane gas that's produced. So, there could be some carbon reduction benefits, but of course that all would require further investment. So it may be revisited in the future. Net zero could be a driver. There's no environmental evidence for it currently. If it is revisited, it's going to be very costly.
That's great. And if you're looking now at the future, so still looking at the future, have we ruled out any more extension of the main drain network? Is that now where it's going to be forever? Or
I don't envisage it being at the sort of current rate of connection forever. We will come back to it, I'm quite certain. But it's not within our 12-year plan that we've recently announced. And I do understand, that's going to be really frustrating for cesspit customers because, we hear them loud and clear. They would like, they'd love to be connected to the main drain. And I do understand that. But as much as we've been announcing, 130 million, it's major investment. A lot of that is needed in just retaining the existing infrastructure so that we can keep providing the good quality service we provide today. We also need to plan for population growth and climate change. And we've prioritised water resources security for the island for the future and drinking water quality. Whenever we have surveyed customers and you look at water companies anywhere, if you ask customers what's important, drinking water quality naturally always comes out at the top. And so, investing in improving our water treatment processes, as I've explained, is, that's a top priority. Making sure that the island does not run out of water in the event of a drought more severe than we've ever experienced before, and making sure that the island has security in terms of water resources for many generations to come. That's a priority for us. And we've explained all of that with our announcement. We've also explained, I think, that we can't do everything. And I think it would be unreasonable, and this is my view, cesspit customers might disagree, but we'd be looking at another 10% on bills if we wanted to restart a meaningful sewerage network extension program, because it's expensive. It costs around about £65,000 per property for the next few schemes that we would do to connect people up. So if we say we thought it was a bigger priority than drinking water quality, I mean, we don't, but the 20 million we've allowed for water treatment investment, if we were to divert that onto sewerage network extension, then over the course of the 12-year plan, we'd be able to connect up about 360 properties to the sewerage network. So unless we want another 10% on bills, we would have to forego the drinking water quality benefits in order to connect about 360 properties. These are the kinds of difficult decisions we're having to make in order to ensure that our customers' money, we maximise the benefit for customers from what they're paying. And unfortunately, there's no room for sewerage network extension in the 12-year plan. Beyond that 12-year plan, yes, I do believe that we'll come back to it and we'll connect more customers up to the sewerage network. It will be expensive. It will take a long time. And obviously, we're not looking to do that for the next decade or so, but we will come back to it, I'm sure.
It's a brilliant explanation of the challenges that you face in making the decisions that you're making as well. I think it's good. If you've got one final message for Guernsey Water customers out there today, what would it be?
Well, we're thinking of you, I guess, and it's a really difficult message to give when you're putting bills up as we are, but we are trying to maximise the benefit that we get from that. We are looking to the future and planning ahead, and in doing so, we're thinking of customers over the long term, not just about customers today, but about future generations and the bills that future generations are going to have to pay as well. And it does mean some difficult decisions today, but over the longer term, we think that's in the best interests of customers, not just today, but future generations of customers as well.
Thank you for your time.
Okay.
Cheers.
Thanks, Nick.
Yeah, thank you for tuning into this podcast. If you've got all this way, I'm really hoping that you've enjoyed our work. There's a few things you can do, though, to support us. Follow, like, subscribe, share, whatever you can do to help spread the word of the Quarry. The other thing you can do is head on over to our website, where you can become a member and really support independent local news.